Hi, my name is Teresa Waldron, and this is my cat Pumpkin. Today I want to talk to you about a really inspiring story that I read this week, and I want to share with you because I thought about how it applies to my life, and I think you'll find similarities to your life as well. So it's the story of the hymn. Oh wait, let me play a game with you before I tell you which hymn it is. What is arguably the best known Christian hymn? You can say it out loud if you're in a group or by yourself. What do you think the best known Christian hymn is? I'll give you a hint. It was originally a poem written in 1772 by John Newton. I'll give you another hint. It's a spiritual autobiography describing the joy and the peace of a soul. And I'm going to read a little bit because I don't want to make a mistake. He was spared from both physical and spiritual ruin and uplifted from despair through to salvation and the gift of grace. What hymn do you think that is? If you guessed Amazing Grace, you'd be right. This is one of my favorite hymns, and I always feel so spiritual when I sing it and listen to it. And I want to share the story behind how it came to be. And I'll read part of it and I'll tell you part of the story. I don't want to mess up the details. There's a lot to it. It's actually, if you can see my screen, 2 pages of notes. But I'll try to make it interesting for you. It's the tale of a defiant man who manages again and again to escape danger, disease, abuse, and death. John Newton was born in 1725 in London, in a thriving sea trade town. His father was a sea merchant. His father was often away for 2 to 3 years at a time, leaving the kids alone with their mom. Unfortunately, his mother got tuberculosis and she passed away, leaving John to go live with family friends called the Catlett family of Kent. Eventually, John's father came back and was remarried, but he was placed in a boarding school. But he kept in touch with the Catlett family because he had fallen in love with one of the daughters named Mary. Mary was the cornerstone of Newton's existence. No matter what befell him, his goal was always to return to her, and you'll see what happens as we go. Newton's youth was marked by religious confusion. His dad had been educated by the Jesuits in Spain, and his mom was a non-conforming Christian who didn't really favor the English church and its pomp and circumstance. He would tend to mock people's religion and try to get them not to believe and get them to question their religion. That was how he operated because he didn't believe it. Newton's life was rife with dangers, toils, and snares that he alludes to in the song. These repeatedly brought him face to face with the notion that he had been miraculously spared. And here are some of the examples of this. When he was young, he was thrown from a horse, narrowly missing a row of spikes that would have impaled him. Another time, he and his friends were going to tour a warship, and he was running late, so he missed the dinghy, which capsized and killed everyone on board, all of his friends, as he watched from the shore. Another time, he was on safari in Africa, and they were using the moon to guide their way back, and they were in a swamp, and the clouds came and covered the moon, and the moon disappeared, and they didn't know where they were. The whole party had decided they would just die in this swamp because they didn't know how to get out. The moon appeared, and they made their way out. Such near-death experiences were commonplace in Newton's life. Yet no matter how many times he was rescued, Newton continued to dissuade others from their beliefs. In 1744, Newton was press-ganged or forced into service of the Royal Navy. He was dishonorably discharged while on the ship and was traded for another man, on a passing ship, which happened to be a slave ship. He was disgraced, relieved of his post. This began his career in slave trading. And Newton soon became tempted by the profits. At that time, merchants believed that as long as they treated the slaves well, that it was morally okay to be a slave trader, because it was permitted in the Bible as long as the slaves were treated with dignity and kindness. While he was in this profession, he was felled by malaria in Sierra Leone, and he was immobilized and abused by one of the slave traders' native mistresses. She reduced him to the condition of the wretch, which he later described in his poem, Amazing Grace. He eventually recovered and freed himself and returned to the ship. He was aboard the ship one night when a violent storm broke out. He was on the deck, manning the ship, and as soon as his shift was over, he went below deck. The man who replaced him was washed overboard nearly immediately by a large wave and killed. He realized his helplessness at that point and concluded that only the grace of God could save him. In his words, this incident marked the hour I first believed. Isn't that interesting? He went through all these other things, and that was what made him realize, okay, I believe in God. And by the way, this is my cat Pumpkin, and she likes to listen too. She's a senior citizen, by the way. She's 16 and a half. Right, Pumpkin? She's a cat. She's not going to answer. Okay. He first believed, and then he went back to England, he married Mary Cartlett in 1750. And at this time, he started encouraging his sailors to pray rather than to taunt them for their beliefs. 3 years after the wedding to Mary, he had a stroke and he could not return to sea. The landlord of the parish where he lived was so impressed with letters Newton had written about his conversion that he offered the church post to Newton as the rector, as the pastor, even though he did not have a divinity degree. He was ordained in June of 1764. Newton met a poet named William Cowper, also a new Christian. Their friendship led to a spiritual collaboration and was the inspiration for Amazing Grace. It was a poem Newton penned around Christmas of 1772. 60 years later, in America, his poem was set to the tune New Britain and has been sung ever since. Newton joined the fight for abolition of slavery by publishing the essay, Thoughts Upon the African Slave Trade. Because Christians still felt that slavery was justified in the Bible, he wisely avoided using religious platform for his points. Instead, he condemned the practice as inhumane treatment of their fellow men and women, which included torture, rape, and murder. So you can see his journey. He did a 180 in his life. Amazing Grace was written by a man moved to speak out against something he openly profited from for many years. In an essay, Newton said, "It will always be a subject of humiliating reflection to me that I was once an active instrument in a business at which my heart now shudders." Thus, it seems fitting that this hymn has become for so many, including those fighting for civil rights. So thank you for listening. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Pumpkin, for listening. Were you listening? I did used to play church guitar when I was a kid, and this song means so much to me. So this is a point where I just want to share with you the song. And please, by all means, if you'd rather Google a effective professional singer, that would be great, because I am not. But I'd like you to take a moment now and just reflect on this. Reflect on his journey and how many things happened to him in his life. I mean, that is incredible. He got almost impaled by those spikes when he got thrown off the horse. He almost drowned, and all of his friends drowned. He watched all of his friends drown, but he wasn't, because he happened to be late. He was lost in the wilderness, and then the moon came out and showed him the way. But he was saved. And I want you to think about how many times in your life, now that you have hindsight, maybe something happened and you didn't see the value of it at the time, but how many times have we been saved? And, you know, by the grace of God, by ourselves, by a friend. It's just a beautiful, beautiful opportunity when we listen to this song to think of different times that we've been saved. From myself to yourself, thank you for joining me on this journey, and tune in again next time for the next episode. I try to bring you interesting things that I learn and I want to share with you, and I think you might find interesting too. And you can have conversations about it at the dinner table or with family or friends, or just think about yourself and really ponder, because we always can learn. We're always growing and learning. So I appreciate you. Thank you for your time and for your effort and for your attention and for staying awake. Now join me in the song if you like. Let me go get my guitar. So I'm not really a singer, but I love this song. So I play a little church guitar and I just want to sing it with you. But you don't need me. If you want to sing it a cappella, go for it. And if you want to join me, sing along. I apologize in advance. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Let's do all the verses. And then we could end with the chorus, okay? 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. The Lord has promised good to me, His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Here we go. Last verse, when we've been there. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Thanks for that song. Thanks for spending some time with me today. From myself to yourself, thank you for joining me on this journey.